Had a fabulous weekend, and boy, we got a lot to talk about today with everything going on with the World Series schedule, with the Astros and the Phils, of course, college football, the NFL. It's all here for you. And in just a moment, we'll be talking with Sean Salisbury. Can't wait for And I'll tell you, if there's a better time of the year than October to talk sports, I don't know when the hell it would be, but it's great to have Sean Salisbury with us every Monday and Friday. And to say the least, Sean, Houston's got to be hopping a little bit right now, man. What a great place to be in this week coming up with the World Series.
It is 6 ALCSs in a row and now another World Series, Grant, and they do not take this for granted, I assure you. But I almost felt in the New York series like their expectations were that they were going to win big. I'm just talking about the vibe from Houston. The matchup was just a nightmare for with a lot of swing and miss pitchers against a team that, Grant, 50 strikeouts in 4 games?
It's a joke.
It is, and I don't know if Boone or Cashman survive it. I'm, as a Yankee guy, you being a Yankee fan, I wonder how you feel from that perspective. Good, but good's not good enough for the Yankees because they're the Cowboys now, right? For the most, I mean, it's not that the Cowboys are waiting on it. They just are. They've become that with a great fan base and great players, but the whole sum is not as good as the parts, and they took a full-blown ass whooping in that series, Grant.
Sean, I told you back in June.
Yes.
When the Yankees were in the middle of a historic season, you remember the start they had. I told you on No Filter Network back in June that I had no confidence in the Yankees, that if they played the Astros, there was no way they were going to beat the Astros. Before this series began, I said the Yankees would be lucky to win a game against Houston. Listen, it's fun to see the ball go out of the ballpark, Sean. Everyone loves that. But when the postseason begins, that's not what wins in baseball. Pitching and putting the ball in play. The Astros have tremendous pitching. They put the ball in play. They put pressure on the defense. The Yankees, their pitching, they got some bad injuries down the stretch. So I'll give them a stretch. Their bullpen got decimated a little bit by injuries. Right. But they didn't lose the game because of pitching, or they didn't lose the series because of pitching, Sean. They lost the series because they can't put the ball in play. They lost the series, Sean, because they strike out too much. And I'm sorry. I've been saying this for years and years and years. Brian Cashman had his day. His day is long gone. I think the Yankees need a new direction in their front office.
I would agree. And these are hard decisions to make because the Yankees have been good. They just haven't been great. And the expectations for the Yankees are not just to be good. I 100% agree. I think they need a complete new direction, and it should start, to be honest with you, of finding a way to keep Aaron Judge a great example, a great guy, a hell of a player. Now, he's a swing and miss guy, but he should be a foundation of your organization. He just should. When a guy's beloved outside the city and by fan bases, Aaron Judge should be the cornerstone. He's Jeter of this generation for them. Good dude, people love, isn't a self-promoter, and is a great player and is going to win the MVP. But, Grant, you're right. 2 things Astros do great, aside from they're really good under pressure, is that they put stressors on pitching staffs regularly. They work counts, and they constantly don't chase bad pitches. And 2 is, if you got a swing and miss in your repertoire as a hitting organization, they're going to wear your ass out. I mean, their 4th best starter right now, or 3rd or 4th, is Christian Javier, and he may be as talented as any of them. He's going to get swing and miss. But we do have a hell of a matchup with the Wheeler, Nola, Framber Valdez, and Verlander. Those 2. Philly is they got some swagger too, and they are really good. But my biggest concern wasn't the Yankees in the ALCS. I thought my bigger concern would have been a team who stresses you out and puts the ball in play. They got the swing and miss, and the Astros have been doing that all year long, Grant. You're going to have to be damn good to beat them, and I think that's pretty obvious moving forward.
I think what else is pretty obvious, other than Philadelphia Phillies fans, the baseball world, they're rooting for Dusty Baker.
You know I am, Grant. You and I have known him a long time, and I will stress it. I think he's 7 this postseason. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
I'll say it again, as I've said here. He's the Andy Reid of pro baseball until Andy won his championship. Everybody loves him. Everybody roots for him. Players love playing for him. They win. The elusive one championship. Andy got his, and he's probably not done. Dusty, hopefully, for my sake, and Philly fans don't want to hear it because Philly makes me nervous because their fan base is passionate and they will get after it, and the energy in the building, and they got great players. So they're a dangerous team. But for me, Dusty Baker, if nobody else, the one guy, if you say, give me one person, Sean, you want to win the World Series for, and I'm pointing right to Dusty Baker. It couldn't happen to a better guy, and I hope to hell he doesn't quit coach managing after this, and I hope he gets it because he has been phenomenal this postseason.
Speaking of phenomenal, we're going to now move to the National Football League. That would be the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they diced up the 49ers defense like it was a scrimmage, like they were playing a shell game, for crying out loud. It was unbelievable. What a performance.
Yeah, Grant, they're playing chess when people are playing checkers. I still think it's a 3-team league. First off, they dismantled, and their defense did a nice job against the 49ers as well, Grant. And we know that the quarterback and the play caller are always going to give you a chance to win. But in what I would consider some poor football across the league, it still is Buffalo, Kansas City, Philly, in whatever order you want them, as the 3 teams, and then teams like the Vikings, who I think are extremely impressive. They're clearly the best team in the NFC North. Green Bay, Tampa Bay in the South, the Saints, the Rams, hell, the 49ers, even with McCaffrey, they've got to get better. They make too many mistakes, and I know they're injured. But, yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs are cut different, built different, and it all starts with number 15 and the guy calling plays.
You mentioned Green Bay and Tampa. I have no confidence in those teams. Why did you mention them in that list of teams in the NFC?
I mentioned them in the list of teams that are right now, quite frankly, horseshit.
Oh, okay.
They're slow.
Okay.
There's no rhyme or reason. I meant it's a 3-team, and I was talking about the disappointments, and I'm glad you brought that up. Teams that we thought were Super Bowl caliber teams that are just kind of, you can start to toss them aside. Now, with those quarterbacks, there's always hope. But, Grant, you tell me when you watch Green Bay and Tampa, aside from both quarterbacks having the history in the league and they still can throw it, what tells you that they're not slow in Tampa? What tells you there's offensive energy in Green Bay? Not a damn thing, correct?
Absolutely. But here's the biggest issue I see with Green Bay. They can't get off the field defensively. They can't stop anybody. They can't stop the run. I mean, we can talk all we want about Green Bay's offense, and without Devontae Adams, they look completely different, and their offensive line's got issues.
Right.
My biggest issue with Green Bay is defensively, even if the offense gets going, that defense cannot get off the field. They cannot stop the other team's running game.
And Tampa, just the big play lacking on their side. Their defense flies around, but their offense is just they don't think. Look how many times they've floundered this season. Great, when Brady's at it, and I always think that Green Bay and like when Brady and Rodgers are going to fix it, right? But this fix, I mean, we're talking about a full season fix. They have not hit their stride back-to-back games for any of these teams yet. So when you think about the NFC, first off, the coaches of the year right now, Brian Daboll and Pete Carroll,
question.
What Pete's done and what Brian Daboll's doing with the Giants, off the chart.
Incredible.
And Kevin O'Connell is doing a hell of a job in Minnesota. I think that the Cowboys and the Vikings are in a battle for who the second best team in the NFC is. I'm not discounting the Giants. I just think now maybe that's not fair because I guess maybe we got to put the Giants at 6-1. At some point, we can't keep saying, "Well, this is fake," right, Grant?
Right.
We can't keep saying this is fake. So I got to put them there. But it's those 4 teams, and ironically, it's not a Rams team, it's not a 49ers team, it's not a Packers team, it's not a Buccaneers team. Those coaches have done a great job, and Geno Smith's got playing good football. Some of the least likely suspects are taking care of their business this year, and it's like Daniel Jones, and it's pretty cool to watch.
I'll tell you what's been cool to watch, and I got my hand in the air for being flat out wrong and not giving this guy any credit. I think maybe the best individual story in the entire National Football League this year is Geno Smith and Seattle. Explain to me, he's just been a journeyman quarterback his whole career, Sean. What is it that has made Geno Smith now a guy that you're like, wow, okay, I got to watch him play? He's a completely different looking quarterback under Pete Carroll in that offense. What's the difference, Sean?
2 things for me stick out, Grant. We can go through all the stuff that if you and I are watching tape and the mechanical stuff, all that.
Yep.
But 2 things that matter in this, and psychologically and confidence at this position probably matter as much as in any sport, right? One is Grant, after you've been in the league a little bit longer, and I'll speak for myself, the ability when the light switch, you knew you belonged, and then the light switch, all of a sudden you say, not only do I belong, I'm starter worthy and I'm a good player. And I know when you say, well, everybody's in the league, but we all question ourselves. Every single person that's ever played at some point, well, maybe some haven't. The mere mortal, Jerry Rice may have never questioned himself, but, some of us have. And there comes a point in maturity in your career where you start to figure out the mental aspect and the physical and mental greet. And you say, okay, I don't have to prove I'm a hero. And in the process, I'm becoming a hero because I become a quarterback, not just a football player that's throwing the ball around. And it looks to me like Geno's matured in he doesn't have to hit a home run every time. He's making really smart decisions, and he's a talented guy. So the maturity of being in the league and watching how others work and watching how you've worked in the past to now, not the hard work you put in, but the way you go about your day and seeing things different mentally and visually as a quarterback. And the other one, finding somebody who believes in you, Grant. They trade for Drew Lock, and they compete, and they did it, and they believed in him, and they didn't go out and trade for Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield. And the talk was, well, they're going to tank for the first pick of the draft or top 5 pick. Well, the way Geno's playing, you may not have to do that. He's really doing a good job, regardless of the personnel. Metcalf goes out now. So it's maturity and having seen the position and having somebody believe in you when you know it matters. And it seems to me like the team and that front office, as well as the coaching staff, believe in him. And he's being coached pretty damn well right there, and he's receiving it, which is nice to see.
Cody's asked a couple of messages on the chat line about the Broncos. What's wrong? Do you think, Sean, that they can find their way? And if they lose to Jacksonville, do you think Nathaniel Hackett's job is on the line currently?
Listen, the people in charge, and having known John Elway a long time, I don't think for optics purposes they'd want to admit they were that wrong this fast, Grant. And it's a great question by Cody. I think that he's going to get the season for sure, but it's not even the fact that they're losing. It's just the horseshit decisions, pardon my French, that they're making that are putting his team in a bind. And he doesn't seem to be the guy in control of this. So it looks like he's in over his head, Grant. I know he comes from a football family. I've known his daddy for a long time, and I know he knows football. But it's a different world you're living in when you're the head coach of a team that just also paid a $260 million quarterback. So John will be patient to a point in that group, but they'll be impatient in a hurry if it continues. If you don't see signs of at least better decision-making, he won't get fired, I wouldn't think, during the season because the bad optics, but he's not long for this position if things don't change.
Boy, speaking of change, there's a big change in Indianapolis, and I know you were just on with Dan Dakich in Indy. Hey, Matt Ryan's got a shoulder injury, but Frank Reich said that he is no longer the starting quarterback of the Colts for the rest of the season. Big news coming out of Indianapolis.
Gosh, I was on, and we didn't know that this morning. Nobody had said anything. I mean, when did that news come down, Grant? A couple hours ago.
Very recently.
Yeah, because when I was on with Dan, we were just talking about Matt's performance, and we weren't even discussing that it could be gone. So with him gone for the rest of the season, now what? Well, the Tennessee Titans have a chance to run away with the division. That division's bad. Now Matt's put up some phenomenal numbers this year and been great in the fourth quarter. But you know what, Grant? They ran it again. They gave it to Jonathan Taylor 10 more times was all. Yeah. Threw it 40 some more. Every week it's 50 or 40 throws. You cannot handle that punishment no matter who you are, especially when you can't move. That's a major setback for the Indianapolis Colts, and expect them to be in a high first round. I mean, trying to manipulate their way to get into the high first round this offseason to get a future franchise quarterback because he's not on the roster right now.
All right, we talked about the Seahawks, but we didn't talk about the Chargers. I mean, they are such a Jekyll and Hyde team. When you watch the Chargers, how do you explain their up and down play this year?
It's disappointing to me because I had them winning this division, I think. And every year, Grant, we this conversation, it's either people get banged up on that roster or they find last year it was the head coach making some really, really odd decisions time and time again of game management decisions. When I look at that roster, it is inexcusable in my mind for them to be a team that's inconsistent. They are too good to be inconsistent. But you are with the record and what the performance shows. They're the type that can go beat a really good team by 2 touchdowns in a playoff game. And they're the type that if they got into a wild card, could get their ass handed to them. I don't know who they are. Of about I have a pretty good idea of the identity of most teams in this league. The Chargers blow my mind. One week I think I'm going to get the Kansas City Chiefs
Yep.
overall and the Buffalo Bills. And the next week I feel like I'm going to get the Houston Texans. So I'm not real sure. They're the one or two teams that have got me baffled that who are they, and I still don't know yet, especially with the inconsistency, and I don't trust that the coach is going to make the right decisions in game management on a regular basis.
I'm still waiting to see who are the Raiders. I know that leading into yesterday's game, they've been the victim of not being able to close out games. They've lost one possession games. I mean, they're playing a bad football team yesterday, as you well know, in Houston. And with the beginning of the fourth quarter, that game is up for grabs. I thought that would be a better performance. Just I know the score looked a little lopsided, but the game was much closer than the final score indicated.
Yeah, and what I do like that they're doing, Grant, now is there's a commitment to Josh Jacobs running the floor. He looks revitalized, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He really, now the Texans couldn't tackle you and me, but it's still, he's running hard and with a purpose. And their offense looked more like I expect it to look yesterday. But listen, I feel like when I'm talking about the Raiders, Grant, it's Groundhog Day.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like they're focused and in tune, and then sometimes I feel like they're scrambling around looking for Waldo on the sidelines. Does that make sense? I'm talking about the head coach too. So as my team, I stay hard, and I'm trying not to overanalyze them. But 7 weeks in, they do not look like a playoff team to me. Yet I see moments when they look like a damn good team, and we're going to find out. Their defense can fly around and do some things, but the consistency on both sides of the ball lead me to believe they're going to be in a major scramble to get in the playoffs if it continues this way.
Blake wants to know, and it's SEAN, but I'm nitpicking. What's wrong with how do you fix the Raiders secondary, Sean?
How long? Well, I'll tell you what you do. You see if Tatum and George Atkinson and Alonzo Skip Thomas can come, have any, can bring them all back in their prime, and Willie Brown, and go do our thing.
Yeah.
Grant, I have, and it's something it's a great point, Blake, for me to look into. Now, when I watch them, Davis Mills, threw it around for 300 yards yesterday, and looked fairly good at times. They're to me a Sports Center secondary, and I'll tell you what that means, Grant. You get a pick six when you squat when a guy's eyes there, and you make the Sports Center top 10 play, and then you make the not top 10 play by allowing a guy to run through the secondary wide open. You're saying, what in the world are you doing? So the fix is personnel. I don't know. Like I said, it's hard for me to judge coaching in that secondary when they've only been through it for 7 weeks. We know, take a look around at some of the teams upgrade. When you get players and guys that are shutdown type players, we're in a time now, the truth is, trying to find shutdown secondary against these quarterbacks a lot of time could be a problem against the good ones. But they have a flair for the dramatic big play, but they also have a flair for the overboard giving up big chunk plays. And they've got to learn to limit that, whether that's scheme or personnel. We're going to find out. But that's another point of emphasis for me to find out, when are the Raiders going to dominate you when we're talking about the Raiders defense is one of the 5 best or 10 best in the league, instead of always having to rely on them to outscore you 38-35. I would like to see that.
All right, NFC West. I want to ask you, now that Christian McCaffrey is in San Francisco, I believe that this is still going to elevate them to win the division. I'm still picking San Francisco to win the NFC West. Christian McCaffrey will do what for the Niners, Sean?
Create major game plan problems for defenses. He was on a couple days where he had to, it's almost to the point where you're on the sideline and say, okay, dude, we're going to call this play. Here's what you're going to do on this play, right? And he's a smart guy, but there's a lot of things, because it's complex, and Kyle's going to use him all over the place, as I would. So what he brings to is, even when he's not touching the ball, a major head scratching during the week. Oh my gosh, they got McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel on the same field, and Ayuk and Kittle's healthy now. Now it's a problem. So what they're going to try to, and what you try to do, is keep pressuring Jimmy Garoppolo and hope he'll throw it to you, which he did yesterday again. So, and when that defense, the biggest problem for the 49ers right now, Grant, is health. They're getting guys back healthy, because they've got a hell of a roster. But Jimmy hopefully will lock in and not making dumb decisions and not throwing the ball in the red zone and the end zone to somebody else. And you can't do that against the Chiefs. Points. You got no shot if you turn the ball over. You can't field goals.
You have to play a perfect game.
You damn right you do. But McCaffrey gives a little more comfort zone for the quarterback. but also if you're Kyle Shanahan, to deploy him in so many ways. The biggest issue is what you're going to do defensively to try to stop when all their weapons are on the field. And by the way, Blake, don't worry about the spelling. I've been called a lot worse than SHAWN, brother. You're good.
Well, you know what? I give Blake credit. I don't know if you saw that, but he actually hemmed it. He goes, "Hey, my bad, Sean." Okay, so
I got him. Yeah, no problem. I'm with
All
you,
right.
brother.
I had this discussion on my Listen App show last week. The trade deadline in the National Football League is coming up. And we always hear about, like, let's say a team like Green Bay, and they need a receiver and they need this. But we always hear that timing and a receiver and a quarterback getting on the same page takes a while. So you tell me, Mr. Quarterback, if a very talented receiver goes to a roster, let's take Green Bay, for example, with a tremendous quarterback, in the middle of the season, do we ignore that relationship between a quarterback and a wide receiver? I mean, it can't happen overnight. Take me through that process. How long would it take for a really good quarterback in the NFL to get on the same page with a good receiver in the NFL?
Overrated.
Okay.
If you told me we had to bring in 2 offensive linemen to join the 3 others and get them in continuity,
yep,
whole different ballgame. Excuse me. Here's why, Grant. Now, the whole thing is not going to be on the quarterback. It's going to be on the receiver that you trade for or bring in to get the verbiage down. Listen, you don't even have to be on a guy like Aaron Rodgers' team that you've been watching on Monday Night Football or Sunday over the course of his career saying, I know one thing, the ball's coming and it's coming on time. I better get my damn head around or it's going to hit me in the wrong spot, meaning the head, right? So that's obvious. But granted, we have route trees in sports. Now, there's adjustments to route. We've done things. We have completely dismantled the route tree of the NFL because we're running zigs and zags and curls and flats and curls and goes and post corners and corner posts. We got it all. But the route tree will tell you, if I call a curl route, dude, we'll get a feel for a curl route's a curl route's a curl route. It's just getting him verbiage-wise and what Aaron Rodgers likes to go to with his checks and those things, or any top-flight quarterback. But when you're a great – well, you saw it happen. Beckham fit in pretty damn quick with Matt Stafford last year, right? Great players, when they get on, spend a little extra time after practice running routes so you can hear what Aaron wants. Dude, when it's a curl and you sit down, if you got leverage, slide a little bit, and this is where the ball's going. And you know with a premium on accuracy with a guy like that. So I don't think that that's the tough part. The tough part is in the middle of the season, if you've been listening to some other verbiage from another team, can you waltz in and grab that playbook that you've got a month to run those plays, and now you got days, and then build in quick, or by the time you've built it in and learned it, it's a master's degree in study is what it is. But if you're a veteran in this league and you don't know how to do that, then you damn well aren't going to help me anyway, so you better study and prepare. Overrated, though, as far as do they have chemistry? Well, listen, if I said Cooper Kupp to Green Bay, Grant, I mean, think about it. I know it's not happening, but you think Cooper Kupp's not going to be on he'll catch 9 balls in the first half. So it's just a matter of what commitment you want to put in and understanding who that guy is that's ripping the ball to you.
Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott yesterday, your thoughts?
Solid, really solid for game back. And you could see what Kellen Moore wants to do, Grant. We talked about is expand the offense now to use all the width of the field and the length of the field, which he didn't get to use vertical and horizontal, that he felt a little bit, had to tone it down because Cooper Rush just isn't as talented as Dak Prescott. The Cowboys are not going to go. They're going to be dangerous. And if Prescott's healthy and continues to grow like this, eventually they're going to have that where they're running it 30 to 35 times, throwing it 28 to 32 times. But it's an upgrade in their offense and makes them dangerous because we know what their defense is about.
Yeah, and their defense is really good. And you mentioned the Giants, and it's raise your hand if you had the Giants and the Seahawks in the middle of the NFL season as being the marquee game.
Right.
As good as the Giants have been, and they have been finding ways to win, they lost 2 more offensive linemen yesterday. I'm waiting for the report yet from New York. One was their rookie right tackle, Evan Neal. He's going to be out at least a couple of weeks. The Giants play Seattle this week in Seattle, and then on Thanksgiving, they're in Dallas. They've already lost to Dallas once. And with that Dallas defense, if that Giants offensive line is still depleted by then, I would give them very little chance of winning. But I mean, think about this, Sean. Middle of the season, the Giants and the Seahawks is a marquee game. That's what I love about the NFL, Sean. Unlike other sports, you can literally turn things around in one season in the National Football League. And I think that's what makes this league so great.
Right. And the winner of the game could possibly be the coach of the year, right? We mentioned the
That's right.
And Brian Dable. Grant, whenever I hear offensive linemen, and 2 of them when it talks about the depth of the position that concerns me. Because what have we known about Daniel Jones in the past? All the ability, turns the ball over, lays it on the ground, fumbles as much or more than anybody in the league. But he really has started to – with him and Barkley, they've both elevated. Barkley looks like the guy you drafted second in the draft when you took him. And Jones looks like Brian Dable is turning him into a guy who, again, found somebody to believe in him. And you can tell he's being coached. And so I get real concerned, Grant, depth-wise, because now you're asking me now to play my 6th and 7th best linemen. Think about that now. 5. Now we're going to be playing 6 and 7, depending on the depth or the length of these injuries. We're going to find out how good the depth of their draft was in their free agency and the personnel, because at that position, I'm telling you, if you're a defensive coordinator, Grant, and I'm that guy on offense, if I see a corner goes down and he's your stud, I'm attacking that ass right immediately. And if I'm a guy who's a defense and have got some personnel, and I know you've got a couple guys banged up, I'm going to test and find out just how good the depth of your offensive line is. Daniel Jones' number one priority, protecting the football. It's paid off this year in wins. The question is, how deep is this injury and how long do these 2 injuries to the big fellas up front go for the Giants? But what a story it's been.
Daniel Jones has just had, I think he's having a season that I wasn't so sure that he was capable of having. His game management, we hear that a lot about the quarterback position, has been outstanding. His game management this year, I would give him an A+. That's how good he has been. He also plays with a great deal of confidence. The Giants have won games on last drives. He's been very steady. You can say what you want about the Giants' offensive line. You know what I liked about yesterday's game? They were not able to run the ball for all intents and purposes for 3 quarters with Barkley.
Right.
But Brian Dable, they did not go away from the running game. And then in the 4th quarter, Barkley was a difference maker on the ground in the 4th quarter. I love the fact that they stuck to their game plan, Sean.
Hey, adjustments are one thing. Shit canning your plan because you struggled for 3 quarters is what amateur hour coaches do. Now, square peg, round hole is one thing, right? You're down 30 and you're trying to run it. Let's not be stupid. But you start to talk about, and in yesterday's game, of sticking with the guy who's been your bell cow back this year and been phenomenal.
Yep.
And you're right about the game management. But what I like, Grant, is he's managing the game properly, but still taking some shots when they're there. He's not playing scared. So the confidence is growing where he knows, okay, I got that. Let me be smart with it. And if I'm not mistaken, watching the game yesterday, Grant, and because that was a big Houston, it was on. I mean, they get all the games, but it was here in Houston. We didn't even have the Dallas game on unless you got the NFL package, right?
Right.
Is the Giants for the win and still laying the ball on the ground? They dropped too many passes. I saw 3 or 4 drops in the game.
They sure did.
The ball dropping balls that could have been extended series. So I really like, but what I do like is they're not wilting over bad plays. The Giants in the past would have, and so would he have. It's a different, and it don't tell me, and we say it every week about this guy, don't tell me coaching and culture and what you're building don't matter. And the believability to stick with it when it's nut cutting time or when you've struggled tells me something about what Brian Dable's all about.
Boy, no question. Let's end this show talking some college football. All right, we know that here we are. We're now getting down to the nitty gritty. We're really in the crux, and we know the 4 teams right now, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the rankings. If there's a team, not 1, 2, 3, or 4 right now in the national rankings that you think has the best chance to get into this playoff coming up in a couple of weeks, who do you think it's going to be? Who's the one team? Oregon? That's okay. So what they did on Saturday, that really impressed you, didn't it?
It did, because, Grant, I go back to their opening game against Georgia and Bo Nix's
they got their ass kicked.
It was not only it was embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
It was such 7th grade amateur hour performance against grown men that right then and there you said, oh gosh, this team, forget Oregon this year. And now they've dismantled step by step. And all the talk was the great explosive UCLA offense, and they got theirs. But Oregon's throwing the ball. Bo Nix is dropping balls in the bucket from 60 yards. I mean, and he's got great toughness and has been in the SEC. Keep an eye on them. Now, if USC would get some help and learn how to get some stops on defense, that would be nice, but they give up too many points. They're one of them. I don't think we can – I mean, look, I guess we can say the TCU Oklahoma State situation, even though TCU beat them, somebody from the Big 12. But, Grant, I'm having a hard time thinking that – put it this way, if TCU's got 1 loss and let's say Alabama's got one loss, or Michigan or Ohio State lose to each other in one game. A one-loss team, who you taking? You taking the Big 12 rep, or you taking Ohio State or Michigan? I'm just going through my head all the different scenarios. I think Ole Miss showed me what I see every year at some point in time, lose a game that they're good enough to win, and LSU was impressive. I'm going to say Oregon right now because they're explosive, they run, they got good team speed, and they're feeling it right now in what is a Pac-12 that's deeper than I thought, but now is winnable as hell, and their only loss has been outside the conference, and it was against Georgia, so keep that in mind. Could happen, but they're going to have some help from their friends because, to me, you got to be undefeated. If you're undefeated in the Pac-12, you're in, but you're going to have some help.
You just made a really interesting point about Bo Nix, and he came from the SEC, is what you said, and that really resonates with me. I mean, like, I like that. I mean, there are two things I really like about what Bo Nix has done this year. He and his team got, as you said, manhandled and embarrassed in week 1 against Georgia. And I really thought that, okay, we can now already cancel Oregon off any national championship hopes. And Nix really did not find himself with Oregon until maybe that third week, when all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is the guy that we thought Oregon was getting. I just love everything about what I've seen from Nix this year. Adversity, but that familiarity and the fact that he knows that he can play in the toughest conference in college football. That does mean something when you go to Oregon, doesn't it, Sean?
Sure. Yes, it does, Grant. You're spot on. And going into hostile environments does not bother him. He's been in them. He's got DNA from his old man in his blood, too. I mean, his DNA says toughness, and he's always had to be an overachiever, right? Tough guy, dealing with that stuff. And then to go in there and humiliate yourself against the SEC, and then have to come back home and face Oregon and think, and the fans thinking, we went and had you as a transfer, and now in the transfer portal, you're our quarterback. And then for him to boom, 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 going all the way down. And it's a good point. When Mario Cristobal left, I think a lot of people said, well, Dan Lanning, is he ready for this? And because I love Cristobal, will they be as physical? Well, I think a lot of people weren't overly happy, and Mario will take care of Miami, I assure you.
You think so?
Boy, I do. I think they did. I think he'll start to get his players, Grant. Remember, this is his first year.
Okay.
You got to give him a chance to at least a couple years to get some of these recruiting classes to see. But it's shocking how Miami's is not – they're not that factor anymore. But I think Cristobal can change it. But Lanning's done a great job. It just took a minute. And Bo Nix, back to him. Grant, I love his toughness because he can survive it. Plus, we got to give him more credit. The guy's a talented player. Some of the throws he made over the weekend against UCLA and plays with his feet were phenomenal. Keep an eye on that team. Keep an eye on their toughness. And I'll tell you a team I don't trust still. Syracuse, if it's not for some stupid-ass penalties, lay down the stretch on late hits, and then not get the same call when your guy got knocked out of bounds on a special teams play, like 5 yards out of bounds. I'm not making excuses. And that kid, Cade Klubnik, I told you about him, Grant, that if DJ left his glove on the mound, that this kid from Austin was going to come in there, and you saw the energy. I don't trust him. I think there's a loss on Clemson as long as you can keep it close. Now, resilience, awesome. Defensive front is NFL. There's still something on the offensive side of the ball missing for me with them. And Syracuse, who competed their ass off, but your stupid plays down the stretch cost you because you had them by the short hairs and let them go. I still don't trust Clemson to be a Final Four team right now, but I may be wrong because Dabo knows how to coach.
For those that don't know, Sean is in Houston. He works on a radio station in the morning as their number one guy, the flagship station of the Houston Astros. So we may have some conflicts during the World Series. So we'll let you know what time we're going to be doing the shows and when. I think the Astros are going to win this in 5 games. All right. That's my pick. What's your pick?
I took the Astros in 5 over the Yankees, and I screwed that up because they swept them. No digger on anybody, Greg, because my Red Sox are watching.
I picked them to sweep them. So,
I know you did. I know you did. And I listen, the 3 things that match for me is the frontline pitching. The depth of their Astros pitching staff's deeper. I love the mental toughness that both organizations have, and you got to be mentally tough, Grant.
Oh, boy.
And look where Philly came. They were 2 days away from the season ending and had to beat the Astros to get into the playoffs. Now they have just kicked ass, and they got what you need. The Harper and Reggie Jackson right now, the similarities of he has a flair for the dramatic. He loves this shit. And you and I both know he loves it. Matter of fact, he may not get a hit in 10 at-bats in a game that's half empty, but you stick him on the biggest stage, this MVP guy is a friggin' monster. He's scary. You got to be delicate pitching to him. I got the Astros in 6 because I think that with Wheeler and Nola, you can steal one of those against Verlander or Fromber, one of those, and they hit the ball out of the ballpark. But again, you'll get swing and miss with them. And I think the key for them is where's Rhys Hoskins? He started to rear his head again.
Oh boy,
I like
did he
that.
ever.
But I'm going to tell you what, man, the relentless pitching staff and they will wear your ass out by taking pitches, meaning the Astros. Astros in 6, and our guy Dusty gets it. I'll tell you a conversation off the air. We texted back and forth last week, and he's just as casual and ready to go and toothpicked out as ever, man. I'm rooting for him. So great series, great passionate fans. Astros in 6.
I love it. Sean, you're awesome. We'll talk to you soon. Again, for everyone that loves Sean on this stream, he's great on YouTube Live. We'll put out all the information via our Twitter and everything else. We'll get it on. We don't know what times yet. We'll figure it out. Sean, have a great week, buddy.
You can follow me at Sean Unfiltered as well, where I'll get all that stuff out for Grant as well. Thank you, brother. Always love being on with you.
Yep, you're the best. All right, Sean Salisbury. Good stuff right there. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to switch gears right now. We're going to talk some NBA, and we're going to talk some Sacramento Kings basketball, if you don't mind. And I did a rant on this today. When you give up 89 points in the first half, you're not ready to play. You're not ready to play. You're mentally not in the game. And I know it was a back-to-back, but that's not an issue to me early in the season. Yes, I know the Warriors are a very good team, although in their first 2 games, they didn't exactly look like world beaters. You give up 89 points. Think about that. 89 points in the first half. And I don't want to hear about the Kings, they made a nice comeback and they got themselves back in the game. No. The Warriors had the game won at halftime. They played the second half like they had the game won. And Steve Kerr even admitted as much in the post-game press conference. Okay? The Kings are 0-3 right now. And I'm fully aware that there are a lot of games left. All right? I get that. 79 games left. And there are examples of teams getting off to bad starts and finding themselves. Jeff says Fox needs help on offense. He does. But we need to stop talking about offense, right? We need to stop talking about offense. From day one, when Mike Brown was hired, all I heard about was defensive coach, defense this, and defense that. In 3 games, the Kings have allowed 115 points to Portland, 3 of the 4 quarters, 30 or more points. Without Kawhi Leonard and without John Wall, in game 2, they allowed 111 points. And then last night, they allowed 130 with a coasting Golden State Warriors team in the second half after giving up 89 first half points. I did a rant on this before the season even began for the Kings. I said, I don't want to hear about the talk anymore. Show me, don't tell me. I don't want to hear about the Kings and what they're doing in practice. I don't give a damn what they're doing in practice, all right? I don't care. It's irrelevant, okay? Practice means nothing to me. Practice is really more important to work on your fundamentals and your timing, okay? You're going against the same players every day. Yeah, when I hear announcers talk about, gee, the team looks good in practice, who the hell cares? Who cares what the hell they look like in practice, right? Who the hell cares? I didn't pick up the paper this morning and look how the Kings have done in practice. Okay, I looked at the standings. You know what the standings showed me? The standings showed me that the Kings are 0-3. That's what it showed me. Didn't say, but they look good in practice. Can we stop talking about this nonsense? Can we stop making excuses for this franchise? There are no more excuses. We've heard excuses for 16 freaking years. Enough with the excuses. All right? Stop it with the excuses. Practice and defense. Their defense is putrid. All right. Can we all acknowledge that? Their defense looks horrible. Man, incredible. Wow. All right, let's get to some more messages on the chat line. No thanks. We have zero use for Russ here. We are in the business of making the cheap Lakers better while also taking on contracts and players that aren't long-term options. Somebody had asked about what about Russell Westbrook. What's wrong with people? What about Russell Westbrook? Stop it already, would you please? I mean, please don't go there. I mean, stop it already. Sacramento sports media filling Kings fan heads with BS. Again, all you need to do is look at the standings, right? That's it. That's what Jeff said. I thought with Brown as coach, it would help against the Warriors. You were right, Grant. No bearing on the game at all. Yeah, I told you that, I think, a couple of days ago. Coaches move around all the time. Doesn't matter. Talent wins in the NBA. All right? Talent wins in the NBA. I'll just say this. You've got 2 games left on this homestand. You've got Memphis and Miami. Now, I'm only saying if this Kings team heads out on the road with 5 straight losses in this conference, with how well Utah and Portland have gotten out of the gate, I know there's a hell of a lot of games left. I'm not so sure that the Kings would be good enough to climb out of an 0-5 hole in the West, okay? So these 2 games are huge because you put yourself in a very delicate situation at the beginning of the season. And I've been getting this a lot. You know, talking Kings, what are they saying? How great they are. Yeah, talk is cheap. All right? Talk is cheap. But I've been getting a lot of messages on the chat line about New Orleans. All right? I'll give you one right here if I can find it because we're getting so many messages. This is right here. You know, that was an aberration, what happened last year with the Pelicans. That was an aberration. The Pelicans roster is better than the Kings roster, okay? In my opinion. So, you know, again, here's another one. We must stop. I'm going to put it to you this way. That's what it's like being a Kings fan. When you're a Kings fan, you have to reach for the impossible. You have to, in your own mind, you have to appease yourself by using another team as an example to make you feel better. So you're like, oh, look at the Pelicans last year. We're going to be the Pelicans last year. Yeah, hold on to that. That's going to get you really far. But that's what it's like being a Kings fan. When you can't look in the mirror and admit how you look, you are going to go, well, you know, if I eat this, if I eat that, if I go to my cosmetic surgeon, blah, 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 I'm going to look like pick out whomever you want. No, you're not. You're the Sacramento Kings. Could you pull off a unexpected feat like the Pelicans last year? I guess you could. But that's what it's like being a fan of the Kings. You have to search for miracles. You have to search and tell yourself it's going to be okay as you're in the midst of another horrifying week of basketball. So, my point is this. Could the Kings do what the Pelicans did last year? How often does that happen? Are the Kings really good enough to go on a run like New Orleans did last year? And that's without even factoring in any injuries? Why don't you just take care of your own business right now while the season is still very, 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 very manageable? with 79 games left and figure out what the hell's wrong with Harrison Barnes, figure out what the hell's wrong with Sabonis, although he was a little better yesterday, figure out what the hell's wrong with Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk. Why doesn't every individual just say, you know what? All I got to do is my job and we'll win these games. Just the way it is. Okay? And getting off to a good start is great. I've been with the Kings when they've gotten off to great starts, and then they've lost 70% of their games the rest of the year. Conversely, I've seen the Kings get off to bad starts and turn it around. But the deeper you fall in the standings in the Western Conference, okay, the more difficult it is going to be. Somebody said, Grant, aren't you the one that said the Pelicans were done when they started 118? Yes, I did. I did say that, and I was wrong. But if you think the Kings are going to start 1-18 and make the playoffs, you're delusional, okay? If you think the Kings are going to start 1-9 and make the playoffs, you're delusional. It's not happening. If you think the Kings are going to start 2-8 and make the playoffs, you're delusional. It's not happening, okay? So the season's right there. It's the first week, okay? You're 0-3. Okay, you're 0-3. Go win your next two games and you hit the road against teams that are not very good, then you're fine. But if you continue to slide, I don't think this team's good enough to fall out of that big of a hole. All right, Wednesday, right here on my YouTube live show, it will be Jerry Reynolds at 3 o'clock Pacific. We're going to talk all Kings, all NBA coming your way Wednesday at 3 o'clock with Jerry Reynolds. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have yourself a great day and a great week. I'll see you right here Wednesday. I'm getting ready for my show coming up on Listen App in about 15 minutes. Hope you can join me. So long, everybody.